49ers offense may look a little groggy this season, as both Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy each had their own baby daughters. Brock Purdy, of course, missed practice on Friday due to personal reasons, which we now know was because his wife was giving birth to their daughter. So congratulations to Brock for signing his multi-million-dollar deal this offseason and then deciding that he needed another milli. All joking aside, I am very interested to see what kind of effect that these two children have on both CMC and Brock. Very exciting times for both of them. There were mixed reports on Brock Purdy's performance at practice on Monday. Some people are saying that he had a fantastic day, and some people said that he had just kind of a subpar day. One of those people was Grant Cohn. Grant Cohn is controversial in the 49ers space. I really enjoy his work. I think he does a great job doing what he does. One thing that he does that I think is a little bit silly is the quarterback training camp stat tracking. Even now with Purdy as the established starter, Grant is putting out his statistics and how Mac Jones is at 77% roughly for his completion percentage during camp. And that got me thinking, so I looked up if there had been any other articles published about Mac Jones in the past and his completion percentage in camp. And a few years ago, while he was still in New England, someone published his completion percentage, and he was, according to Mark Daniels, Mac Jones was at 80% completion percentage through 11 days of camp in competitive 11-on-11 drills. And we all know what Mac Jones is, so just it's very funny to me that we're still keeping track of that. And I think for Brock specifically, once we get into the games, we'll really see what he looks like. But I have complete faith in Brock, and his training camp stats to me aren't really that important. Ricky Pearsall made his return to practice, and according to what I've heard from the people at training camp, it looks like he's actually looking pretty solid. Seems to be pretty much up to full speed, although Kyle Shanahan did say that his reps were a bit limited in practice. So, hey, overall good news hearing that Ricky is back. Those hamstrings can linger for a long time. And so knowing that he is already full go at practice with maybe some slight limitations, they're just trying to play it safe perhaps, is great news for the 49ers, especially after Jacob Cowing went down with a hamstring injury. In addition to Jacob Cowing, Renardo Green also left practice with a hamstring injury, and he's expected to be back for the Raiders joint practices. So this has been kind of an ongoing theme with the 49ers this season. And man, so many hamstrings. It's very interesting. I wonder if maybe they need to tweak the way that the players are warmed up, or maybe there's, I don't know, when it comes to hamstrings, it really seems like stretching, and I'm not a doctor or trainer, so I don't know, but stretching properly seems to be kind of lacking. So maybe they need to adjust that going forward, because there have been quite a few hamstrings already this season. And in practice on Sunday, there was an unfortunate incident where Teron Jackson, I believe he's a D tackle, was stretchered off the field. He was taken to a local hospital. He had all feelings in his extremities. He was able to move his fingers and toes and talk. So overall, good news. I know I've had teammates in the past who were, taken by ambulance to the hospital after or during practice, and so yeah, he's already been discharged from the hospital, which is good news. But all thoughts to Teron. Hopefully he's okay. Or yeah, I think that's his name, Teron Jackson. I've been saying this ever since they picked him in the draft, but Mykel Williams seems to be a beast. According to everything that I've been hearing from camp, he is just absolutely tearing it up. Trent Williams said he looked like DeForest Buckner, which he himself is a beast, so that's high praise from Trent. And according to what I've heard from some reports, he beat Trent Williams in practice today. I'm not sure if it was in team drills or in one-on-ones, but apparently he made Trent look human, which is insane. Hopefully that means that Trent did not take a step backwards, but that Mykel is just everything that he's been hyped up to be. So I'm really excited to see him, and I'm just excited to see him. And according to Brad Graham, which you may know as SF Niners, Robert Saleh was using Mykel Williams in very creative ways in practice. And here's a tweet from Brad. Bosa lined up in the wide 9, Mykel standing up in the 3 technique, Givens inside shade of offensive guard, overloading one side. Mykel fake drops into coverage, Bosa crashes inside, and Mykel loops around on the stunt to the outside. I cannot express how hyped this made me to see, because this is an exotic look. That is something that has definitely been missing from this 49ers defense. They never they haven't given any exotic looks over the past 2 seasons. So it's exciting for them to finally get both players and coaches who are willing to do that. Because the most exotic look, if I remember correctly, is they had Fred Warner and another linebacker line up in the A-gaps, and that's it. That's as exotic as they ever got. So this is really cool, and I'm excited to see what this defense looks like, especially with Mykel Williams. More news from Sunday. Eli Apple was signed by the 49ers. Very interesting signing, especially considering some of the free agents that are still out there. Maybe this is more of a depth piece, or maybe this is just to have another body in camp. But yeah, Eli Apple is kind of, he's an apple that gets picked on quite a bit. Not sure what kind of role he'll play on the team, but yeah, very interesting to say the least. I'm not a huge fan of this signing, other than perhaps him just coming in to be another body in camp. And I just have to say, but I'm not at camp, so I'm not seeing these things. I mean, I'm seeing some clips online, but a lot of what we learn from training camp are from people who are there, who are watching, from beat writers, from there are people who, just other reporters, whether they have a podcast or YouTube channel, whatever it is. So we're taking their word for everything that they're putting out there. And according to them, D. Winters has been kind of lighting it up. And today they had pads on for the first time. He was kind of taking guys to the ground, which you usually don't do with your teammates. But hey, that's really good news, especially, he's got big shoes to fill. He's not going to be Drake Greenlaw, but he's going to be in there in that weak side linebacker position. And I thought he could be that guy. We just haven't seen him as much as I would like. So hopefully he can go in there and be a beast and earn that position. But hey, good news is that the Niners may not take a super huge step back with him. And 2 rookies who have been reportedly really solid in camp. Jauan Jennings, the running back from Oregon, has been hitting the holes hard. I've seen or heard him being compared to Jordan Mason, which if you've listened to any of my episodes before, you know that I was not a fan of the 49ers letting Mason go in a trade. But it seems like, hey, maybe Jauan Jennings is going to be a guy. And another completely different position who stood out is CJ West. Apparently he has been really awesome in camp. He's a little bit of a smaller guy, but according to Grant Cohn, he's a little bit smaller, but he's a little bit more developed versus their other defensive tackle, Alfred Collins, who is quite a bit bigger, but not as developed as far as moves go. So 2 solid players to watch this preseason and who I've been excited for. And it seems like they are doing really, really well in camp so far. And on the topic of CJ West, I'm just scrolling through Twitter here, trying to figure out if there are any updates from camp that I should be covering. So I'm kind of covering Friday, Sunday, and Monday today. And I'm recording throughout the week to try and stay ahead of things and not be putting together everything last minute. But as I was scrolling through Twitter, I saw that Johnny Dells, who does the Johnny Dells Football Academy on YouTube, is going to be putting out a CJ West video breakdown of his college tape for 6+ weeks. So I highly, highly recommend that you go follow Johnny Dells on Twitter and on YouTube and check out those film breakdowns. I know I have learned he's just a great follow in general if you want to learn about football as a whole, but also the 49ers playbook. He pulls a lot of plays directly from the playbook and kind of walks you through what the different reads are, how things should look. And of course, he does breakdowns of some of the players that are drafted as well. So highly recommend you check out Johnny Dells. Just solid content, very high quality and very knowledgeable. I enjoy his work, and every game after once he gets the film and breaks it down and puts up his videos. I know I'm always watching those, so I highly recommend you go check it out and consider joining his. I have no affiliation with Johnny, by the way. I just really enjoy his stuff, but I highly recommend that you support him. He's been dealing with quite a few, I guess some companies are tagging his videos and hitting him with copyright strikes and some of that stuff. That's never fun, although he is educating, I believe. I know I've learned a lot from Johnny Dells, and so I highly recommend you go check it out. All right, getting back to some updates from training camp. We're going to start off with a few injuries here. The big guy, the rookie that everyone has been talking about and hyping up, including myself, Mykel Williams, had a minor ankle injury. The 49ers don't believe it's a long-term thing, and they're going to keep monitoring it. So hopefully he's back sooner than later. Obviously, you don't ever want to hear that, especially for a guy that's been standing out as much as he has. Jauan Jennings re-aggravated a calf injury. There's no timetable for his return. It's kind of a scary thought. We all know what happened with CMC's calf injuries last year. Very fortunate those did not turn into not only one, but two torn Achilles. So I guess we'll see what this means for Jauan Jennings' contract extension. You know, if it doesn't happen, they might have to bring in another guy. A name that I've seen floated out there is Keenan Allen, which would be pretty cool. Honestly, if the 49ers truly believe that this is their year, or they have a shot this year at being a Super Bowl contender, then I think they definitely should bring in another receiver. They did sign Andy Isabella, so maybe that's the guy. Maybe he is the one. I guess we'll see. Another rookie that has been dealing with some knee issues is Jordan James, the running back from Oregon. Again, hate to hear that, especially for a guy that has been talked about in a glowing way this training camp. Hopefully he'll be back soon and it's nothing too serious. I'd love to see him in the preseason and see how he does there. So hopefully this is a short-term injury. And then Diamador Lenore has been dealing with a hip injury. He'll be out, I think Shanahan said 3 or 4 practices. So yeah, that's not fun. Because at this point, both the 49ers cornerbacks, Renardo Green and Diamador Lenore, are hurt. Of course, you want them to be there in training camp and preseason, but ultimately you want them healthy for, usually before the last preseason game, maybe the second. So hopefully they can get back before then. And yeah, that's from what I understand, those are the main injuries that have happened this week. Hopefully there aren't too many more, because it seems like there are already quite a few to start training camp. Jair Brown was solid in his first years in the 49ers system, and last year he kind of took a step backwards, and a lot of people have been kind of off of the Jair Brown train, which I think is a little premature. Maybe we don't know. For a long time we didn't know what exactly happened to him. Why did he take a step back? And he talked about it, and kind of I think he did take responsibility. He's like, I didn't have the season I wanted. He's coming off an injury in the Super Bowl. And then someone asked him if the change in DC had anything to do with it. He said, yeah, it did have a lot to do with it. And it makes a lot of sense. Maybe a lot of Jair Brown's regression last year had to do with it changing defensive coordinators from his rookie year, because when he was a rookie, they had Steve Wilkes, and say what you want about him as a defensive coordinator, but his specialty was defensive backs. So I don't know, maybe that kind of helped elevate Jair Brown in his rookie season. And then obviously taking that transition between Wilkes and Sorensen, where Sorensen just it kind of seemed like he wasn't ready for that job. Might be a great guy, great coach in different ways, but he just was not ready for a defensive coordinator position in the NFL. And that's okay. But now I think Jair Brown is going to take a step forward again this season. He's got a guy in Robert Saleh who elevates defenses everywhere, right? And then they also brought in Gus Bradley as a defensive support guy. I don't know what his exact role is, But having guys like that is going to help Jair Brown, and I think he'll be back this season. At least that's what I'm really hoping for, because he really was solid his first year. He had a pick against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and then apparently he did injure his shoulder in the Super Bowl with a hit against Travis Kelce in the fourth quarter, and apparently he had to deal with that all that offseason, trying to get ready for the next year. So I don't know if that was ever reported or not, or if he just kind of dealt with it on his own. Another thing that he talked about that he's been doing is he's been joining the quarterback and wide receiver meetings, just trying to learn about how these positions are trying to attack defenses. He specifically mentioned cover 3 and cover 4, so I wonder if those are areas where he felt like he really struggled with last year or he can improve on. But look, I like Jair Brown, and I think, like I said, just having a new good defensive coordinator and Gus Bradley is a support guy. And he seems like he genuinely wants to improve. He's going into the quarterback and receiver rooms trying to learn and better himself. And that's what the best professionals and professional athletes do, right? They want to better themselves. They want to take things that they haven't been the strongest at and make those things stronger. They want to improve their weaknesses, play on their strengths, and continue to educate themselves. So Jair Brown, I'm really rooting for him this year, and hopefully he can get back to what he was for his rookie season and maybe even take a step beyond that. Ricky Pearsall also talked to the media this week. He mentioned his injury and how he kind of injured it himself while working out outside of football. So that's unfortunate. It seems like Ricky, the impression I get of Ricky is that he's similar to guys like CMC, where they take the off season to train and try to improve themselves. And while that is admirable, and I think it's awesome that he's doing that, it does add a little wear to your body. And it's not the exact same wear as going out and playing an NFL game, but it is wear and tear on your body. And the off season before, when between the draft and obviously his rookie season, he did a lot of training and had a similar thing happen. So maybe he's got to cut it down a little bit on the training. I hate to say that because he obviously just wants to work on himself and improve. But yeah, it's unfortunate he's dealing with that. Hopefully he's going to be back to full strength here shortly. He also opened up about the shooting that he dealt with last year. He says that every night before he goes to bed, he has to deal with that. He kind of has a flashback of it. So it really is insane that he was able to come back so soon after that last year. But props to him. He really seems to be made up of the right stuff. That's for sure. And his perspective, I really enjoyed. Here's a quote from his press conference. I think someone asked him about, some of the struggles that he went through last season. And he said, "My problem is so small compared to the bigger problem out there and what other people get to deal with. I never really get too low, I would say. I really just have a similar mindset. I'm on this grass right now. I get to wear this logo. I get to breathe. I'm excited for all those things versus maybe the ball not coming my way. That comes with being a wideout." And then he kind of reiterated that being a receiver, the ball is not always coming your way. That's just what the position takes. Sometimes it just doesn't come your way. And that was kind of happening in the middle of the season. And what he said, he also mentioned at some point that it's really important for him to run full speed all the time. And while he may not always get the ball, when he does, he's got to make the most of that opportunity. And that's why he has to go full speed. He's part of a team. And I really like that. That is something that Debo struggled with and received quite a bit of criticism for. And I'm the biggest Debo Samuel fan. I'm hoping for his success in Washington. But this was an area where he really, for whatever reason, he just never really wanted to run full speed whenever he wasn't running the ball. And it's funny because there was a play, I think against Seattle, maybe not last season, but the season before, where he was running more of a clear out route and Brock ended up throwing him the ball and it went for a touchdown. So it's cool to hear Pearsall kind of have that mindset that he's going to be going hard all the time. I really am hopeful that he can stay healthy, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the table this season. Kyle Shanahan also talked to the press this week. And honestly, there wasn't very much that I took away from his press conference. Cannot talk this morning. The main thing that I took was that there is a battle for left guard between Ben Bartch and Nick Zakelj. So very interesting there. He talked about Ben Bartch's one start against Buffalo last season where he played very well, and then he got hurt the next week, so Shanahan wasn't really able to fully evaluate him. Hopefully these two guys are up for the task. Aaron Banks was a solid left guard, and last season he took a little bit of a step back, so hopefully one of these two guys can step up and play that position, because they're going to be playing right between Trent Williams and the center, who, I mean, center. We all know Jake Brendel. Of course, this is one area where the 49ers did not seem to really... Wait, it's a left guard or right guard they're competing for? Hold on, wait just a moment. What did Dominic Pooney play last year? Dominic Pooney was right guard, right? Pooney. What did Pooney play last year? Okay, he is the right guard. I don't know why I had a little bit of a brain fart right there. Yeah, so those guys are competing for left tackle or left guard. Oh boy, if they were competing for left tackle, that would be the season would be over at that point. But yeah, they're playing between Trent Williams and Jake Brendel. So that's kind of an important position. And rather than going out and getting a guy in the draft or free agency, the Niners are letting these two guys battle it out, apparently. So hopefully that works out for them. I mean, we'll see if they haven't talked about a center competition, but we'll have to see if there is one between Jake Brendel and I think his name is Matt Hennessy, who they brought in, who could potentially be pretty solid. So yeah, no changes on the offensive line. Colton McKivitz did talk about how the season he's wanting to improve, which, I mean, that's always good. You always want to get better, but he has a goal to be a Pro Bowler this year. So setting that bar high, I think, is really good. Obviously, you want people to do that, and hopefully he can take a step forward this year, because he's on the opposite side of Nick Bosa, and obviously, or on the opposite. Wow, I need some more coffee this morning or something. He's on the opposite side of Trent Williams. So obviously, a lot of teams, we've seen Bosa do this where he'll alternate sides. One time, once he'll play on the right, one time he'll play on the left. And a lot of teams will do that with their best pass rusher, especially if they know there's a weakness. And Trent Williams is a Hall of Famer, All-Pro. They're going to pick McKivitz to be that guy to pick on. So hopefully he can take that step forward and be solid this season. All right, so that's everything I have this week regarding the 49ers and their training camp. There might be some things that I've missed. Hopefully not, but we're going to talk right now about some former 49ers. So if you're not interested in hearing about past 49ers, then this part won't be for you. Specifically, I'll be talking about Charvarius Ward and a few things that he said to Mike Silver at some point this offseason, and just talking about leaving the 49ers and some of the stuff there. And then we'll also be talking about last night's Hall of Fame game between the Chargers and Lions. We'll be talking specifically about Trey Lance. So obviously, Trey Lance brings up... there are a lot of Trey Lance opinions out there, so I'll be sharing mine about last night. And if you're not interested in that, then feel free to skip this. So starting with Charvarius Ward, I haven't had a chance to fully read the article, so I've been taking. There have been some screenshots shared that I've been reading. So I'm going to basically do my best to summarize those. If you have the chance, go check out the Mike Silver article. I believe you do need a subscription to, I think, The Athletic. So, yeah, I highly recommend you check that out and read it for yourself. But there were some interesting things from this interview that talked about kind of the process behind the scenes for the 49ers and talking about contracts and extensions and things like that. So he talked about how he had this really good season with the 49ers, not last season, but the year before. And he talked about how he wasn't really that motivated going into the season because he had just come off this really, really good year, obviously the Super Bowl, and the 49ers essentially told him that he wouldn't be getting a contract after last season. And while that was frustrating, kind of what frustrated him a little bit more was that he had to go and have a surgery done. He had to go through rehab and training and go through all these things. And he saw guys who also got paid and they were kind of, maybe taking days off here and there and just not working quite as hard as him. And they were the ones that were getting these contracts and he wasn't. And so he kind of felt unmotivated. McCaffrey, Trent Williams, and Ayuk all received extensions after skipping team activities, and he was there. He showed up, and it's very interesting hearing about this. It kind of sheds some light on the culture of the 49ers and potentially a little bit of a explanation for why last season was so weird and so bad. He opened up about how he was just not really motivated, and eventually he did get to the point against Dallas where he's like, I'm ready. I'm going to get back to my usual self and stop, essentially snap out of the guy that he was at that moment, kind of bitter, unmotivated. And as he started to get into a groove and into rhythm, specifically against Dallas, that's when he had the very, very unfortunate incident with his daughter who ultimately passed away. And after that, he just kind of became a shell of himself. And I don't blame him at all. I mean, being a dad, I don't know. I don't even want to think about that. But the fact that he was able to come back last season and even play football at all is incredible. And he talked about how he was kind of out of it. He wasn't really focused. He would get coached up and just kind of, it would go in one ear and out the other. I don't blame him at all. But I think it's so cool that he was able to open up about this and talk about this because it is important to talk about these things. He talks about how he kind of regretted coming back and that kind of the only reason he did come back was so that the 49ers would pay him, which is a little sad. Obviously the Niners are paying him millions of dollars, and if he's not playing the games, it's a part of his contract. But, for the 49ers, I think it would have been pretty, I don't know, it's tough because it is millions of dollars, but it would have been nice for them to kind of reach out and say, hey, look, if you don't want to come back, that's okay. We will figure out some way to get you, maybe not your full amount of your contract, but we want to make things right for you, somewhat right for you, right? Like, we don't want you to have to play this season because of this tragic ordeal that you've gone through. But, here's something because we want to honor you and try to help you out. But it's more, I've always liked Charvarius Ward, and I was a little bummed out the Niners didn't try to re-sign him. Hopefully he does really well in Indianapolis, but last season he talked about how he just kind of wanted to get away from the Bay and away from where this horrible tragedy happened. And I don't blame him for that. I kind of felt like everything just kind of, if I were in his shoes, it would seem like everything that happened, not necessarily for a reason, but with the 49ers not offering him a contract, the awful loss that he suffered, and then just everything else, everything pointed towards him leaving. At least that's, if I were in his shoes, that's how I would have seen it. Everything that happened were signs to maybe move on to go somewhere else and try to regroup that way. So yeah, I'm rooting for Charvarius Ward this season. I hope that he can come back strong and have a really good year with the Colts. Always a fun interview to listen to. He was always open and one thing that I really enjoyed watching was, some of the clips with him and his daughter. Now he's got a boy as well, and just seeing him be his best self as a player and dad was one of my favorite things about Charvarius Ward. So hoping for the best for him this season. And then going back to the 49ers, hopefully I think this has really set a precedent for this season and how the 49ers are going to handle some of these veteran guys, the guys that are getting paid, and kind of forcing them, and they shouldn't have to be forced, but, making them participate in training camp, making them participate in some of these voluntary and involuntary things that they've kind of not done over the last few years. It's setting the standard that it doesn't matter if you've been paid, if you're an all-pro, if you're a Hall of Famer, you're showing up and you're doing the work. Hopefully that's what Kyle Shanahan is doing, and not letting these guys take, all this time off and potentially, irking some of the other guys who are there working hard and not reaping the benefits. So I think hopefully it's a good thing to shake up that culture and kind of make everyone do all the work that they should be doing anyway. And returning to a guy that the 49ers drafted several years ago, whose career has not taken off, unfortunately, Trey Lance made his Chargers debut. 49ers Twitter is going crazy over this game with the usual, the people who are overreacting, the people who are underreacting to this game. And the truth is, everyone's going to have an opinion, and depending on your thoughts on Kyle Shanahan, it really relates back to him. So I'm trying to give a more grounded take on last night's game and the whole situation regarding Trey Lance. In the past, I've talked about how I felt like the 49ers completely botched Trey Lance's development. And while that is somewhat true, I don't think the mistake was necessarily... The thing is, the plans didn't really correlate with where they were in their team building process. And also, Kyle Shanahan and Trey Lance just weren't the best fit for each other. But anyway, we're going to talk about last night's game really quick. I didn't actually watch the game. But I went through and watched the Trey Lance plays, and the truth is he looked solid. He had a few really good touch passes in that game, pretty good deep pass to I don't know who he was playing with, honestly. I just saw the plays. And then one other key thing that he was doing was he was checking the ball down, which is something that surprisingly is one of his biggest criticisms when he was in San Francisco, which is funny because Brock now gets a lot of flack for being a check down merchant and relying on Yak and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny and ironic how that works out. Trey Lance was criticized for not checking it down enough, and Brock Purdy, the team carries him because he checks it down so much. So kind of funny how that works. It's just the nature of quarterback and NFL and Twitter and social media. So a lot of people will also say that Trey Lance was playing with backups or against backups. While that is true, he was also playing with a bunch of backups. So, when you're playing, it may not be starters on the defense or on the offense, but he did exactly what he should have done. As a solid NFL quarterback, that's exactly what kind of performance I would have expected, whether it was Trey Lance or Patrick Mahomes. No, I'm not comparing Trey Lance to Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying, if you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, playing in that kind of preseason game, that's kind of the stat line, the effort, the performance you would come to expect. So it's kind of I'm not going to sit here and say it was the greatest performance of all time, but I'm also not going to downplay it and say it's because he was playing against a bunch of scrubs, because it's just not true. It's more baseline than anything, in my opinion. I also think Trey Lance is in the perfect situation with Jim Harbaugh. There are lots of debates on who's a better coach between Harbaugh and Shanahan. I'm not going to get into that, but I will say they are two different types of leaders. And this, with Harbaugh, he is really a player motivator. He instills confidence in his players. He is a true leader. And we saw that last night with Trey Lance, and he's in a good situation where he's not expected to be the starter. I believe he's the backup for now behind Justin Herbert, which is a good spot to be in. Much better than Dallas. I think Dallas is that's a place you don't ever want to go, especially if you're a quarterback. And Dak Prescott is getting paid an absurd amount of money for some reason. So anyway, that's besides the point. Harbaugh, well, I guess Shanahan is notoriously hard on his quarterbacks. He's very critical of them. And while Trey Lance, the difference between Trey Lance, there are many differences between Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, but with Brock, he's a little bit more sure of himself. He played 4 years of college football, and he kind of seems to want to always better himself. He kind of knows who he is, and he wants to improve on that. He knows what his abilities are, what his weaknesses are, and he can improve on those things. He's not necessarily a guy that you have to go in and mold, versus Trey Lance, where he it's just so strange with the COVID year. He didn't really play that whole season, so he had all this time off. He's very raw, he needed some development. And with where the 49ers were in their process, they weren't in a position to develop a quarterback. And Shanahan is not really a quarterback developer. He's more of here's the system. This is what you have to do in the system. And if you can't do it, then it's not going to work out for you. And that's just not what Trey Lance, it was never going to work out, which is why why the pick was a mistake in the first place. And I like Trey Lance a lot. He's the same age as Brock Purdy. He's 25 years old. And I'm rooting for him because it was the 49ers that kind of screwed him up rather than him screwing up. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't ask to be picked third overall. And we're going back to this argument. But anyway, Shanahan, the team wasn't in a good position for a guy like Trey Lance. And now with the Chargers, this is like the perfect scenario. Solid roster, solid quarterback to learn from being behind Justin Herbert. Whereas Jimmy Garoppolo, it's been noted that he was kind of hard to get a hold of in the offseason. Didn't seem like he really wanted to improve himself. He just kind of showed up, and Brock wants to improve himself constantly. And with Herbert, he's been, while I am not super high on Herbert, he has had some success in the NFL, and he could potentially give a lot of pointers to Trey Lance as well, versus, Justin Herbert's going to give a lot more wisdom, expertise to Trey Lance than Jimmy Garoppolo ever would have. So there's that. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was how Trey Lance really should have started from the beginning if they wanted to develop him in San Francisco. And we're going back to this. You know what? Maybe we're not going to talk about this. He's with the Chargers now. That's all that matters. Was it a mistake for the 49ers? Yes, at the time. I do think he can develop to be a high-level quarterback just based on his physical attributes. It just needs to be in the right place, the right people around him. It's funny. So many people criticize Brock for having the Avengers around him and having all these people around him. And the truth is you do need people around you to be successful in things that you do, including the NFL, right? Jalen Hurts last year won the Super Bowl. Was he carried by Saquon Barkley? No. The truth is it's everyone on that team. It's not just Salin. It's not just Jalen. It's not just Saquon. It's not AJ Brown or Devonta Smith. It's everyone. It all goes together. They all are on the same team, and it does matter who's around you. It does. It's not a bad thing. People act like it's so bad that a quarterback has good players around him. And the truth is that's what you need. So, anyway, I'm rooting for Trey Lance. Hopefully he has success in San Diego. I think both him and the 49ers are in the best positions that they can be currently with the 49ers with their quarterback situation, Trey Lance with his quarterback development situation. So that's that. And on that note, that is everything I have today. So talking a lot about Niners training camp and non-49ers players. But I think it all goes hand in hand. It's training camp. There's not a lot to talk about besides what's going on there. And then, of course, the NFL is back. A football game in July. I didn't get to watch it because I was out on a date with my wife. So obviously I'll take that date anytime over a random preseason game, but it's good to have football back. I'm a little disappointed. I I did try to go back and watch it on Peacock, but apparently you can't do that anymore. I swear I used to be able to, maybe it's just a preseason game thing, but I thought you used to be able to go and after the game rewatch it. So it's a little disappointing, but whatever. Football is back. It's a good time. I'm excited to keep watching the 49ers and yeah, stay tuned. Hopefully soon I'll be able to do my prediction show with my dad and brother. And we can talk about the 49ers season outlook at some point during the preseason, maybe after we've watched a couple of games. I want to do a roster projection for guys who I think will make the roster, who I want to make the roster, because obviously in my off-season recap episode, I talked about the roster at the time, and there have been quite a few changes since then. So obviously that's to be expected during this time of year. There are injuries, there are guys that get cut, guys that get brought in. So yeah, that's going to do it today. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Please stay tuned for more Sports Time with Chris episodes. They drop every Friday. I'm still trying to get into a groove, so I don't have a set time for that to drop, but I am going to say it will be every Friday. So stay tuned for that. Thank you again for listening. This has been Sports Time with Chris.